Giants, Washington football team. Going through what y'all need to know to make some money on this bitch. Thursday Night Football, week 2. Not quite as much of a fun one as week 1, but still money to be made for sure. So as far as my betting record so far with these teams, undefeated, perfect on the season. Obviously just one game, this being the win, spread, and over-under. But yeah, let's talk about it. You know, this is a tough start for the Giants, to say the least, right? So they come off a game where they pretty not competitive with the Broncos for a lot of the time, and a lot of it stems from their really weak offensive line. Something you could have talked about going into the season, and something that absolutely still applies. One of the teams you really don't want to play is the Washington football team. Now, we're going to go through step by step how this game is going to go, starting with the run game into the passing game, kind of get the full picture. And then talk about how many points they might actually score. So when we talk about the running game first, this shit is a disaster for the Giants. It's just a disaster. You look at their interior offensive line, and Shane Lemieux injured, so it's going to be Ben Bredeson stepping in. Those 3 interior guys are at a huge disadvantage here. Nick Gates is one of the softest centers in football, to be frank. Not necessarily personality-wise, but just he does not have good play strength. He consistently gets controlled at the line of scrimmage, does not move guys at all. Ben Bredeson, frankly, was down there with him as far as his performance last week and last year. Not a positive player as far as I'm concerned at this point. Will Hernandez, well, he's a little stronger. He's not going to do much, especially when we talk about this. The strength of the Washington offensive line, or defensive line, sorry. It's still way, way up there with the best in the league. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, dominant force on the interior, especially Payne, is going to be consistently controlling the line of scrimmage. Even their backups, Matt Ioannidis, Tim Settle, just too much winning from this Washington defensive front for Giants to really have a chance, and then extends their tackles. Andrew Thomas, maybe he'll do a little bit of okay work, but it's really, really going to be few and far between. Nate Solder is not a capable run blocker at this point in his career, and with this elite pairing of Chase Young and Montez Sweat on the edge, it's just not going to end up going well. On the second level, it's kind of more of the same with how good the Washington team is up front. None of these offensive linemen are going to be touching the linebackers. And while Washington's linebackers were not particularly impressive last week, Jamin Davis played his first game, and he didn't do a whole lot of nothing. Now, he wasn't notably horrible, which for a linebacker, I talk a lot about how linebackers generally suck as rookies. That's nice to see. He didn't suck against the Chargers, but he definitely wasn't a positive, which would normally be something I'm worried about, but not here. He's going to be very clean. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants to do, basically. And between him and John Bostic, they're going to be more than okay. I like Cole Holcomb a lot. In fact, he's the most positive of the 3, but he's always going to be good. Those other 2 are the ones I'm worried about here. Not worried about him. They also have other guys who play the run well. Landon Collins is a high-end player. Cam Curl can make plays in that area. It's just really, really bad. And while the Giants do, I guess, theoretically have a chance because of Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley isn't exactly a offense into himself. And you're going to see a lot of negative yardage plays in the run game. So then we talk about passing, and frankly, it doesn't get better. Daniel Jones. Well, here, we'll get to Daniel Jones. So first, pass rush-wise, it's still awful. This pocket is going to be collapsing constantly. The strength of the outside rushers here is going to make the tackles fall way back in the pocket, especially, again, Nate Solder, who cannot stand up to that type of thing. This interior is going to get fucking bodied consistently. It's going to get really, really ugly. And unfortunately for Daniel Jones, that's reminiscent of last week. Literally, look at what happened with the Broncos. The Giants' offense barely functioned until garbage time at the end of the game because they get fucking smoked on the interior. Daniel Jones cannot handle pressure well. He will throw the ball quicker at this point in his career than he used to, but he doesn't make good decisions with it. He doesn't throw it into the proper areas. He just kind of gets rid of it. And it's just it's just bad. Daniel Jones is just not going to be able to handle it. He's not going to be able to get the ball into consistently positive areas for the offense. And you look at the receivers, that is the one place where I'll give them a chance. Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard are good enough that your offense, has a little bit of a baseline of production because those guys are going to be open and or useful. But even that's really limited here. Those guys are not high end of themselves. Again, a lot of their production came in garbage time. And these Washington corners are good, especially William Jackson III is the exact type of player I'd pick to put up against Kenny Golladay or Darius Slayton. He's going to be able to keep them in check very, very well. Sure, they have chances, long bomb receptions because they always do. But William Jackson III is very good. Kendall Fuller as well is a perfect matchup, especially for Sterling Shepard. If he's moving into the slot, Kendall Fuller will keep him in check again very, very, very consistently. While it's not perfect, it's not the shutdown 0-for-0 type thing. He's more than good enough to do what he needs to do. And on the other side, Benjamin St-Juste as a rookie in his first game last week was he was fine. He wasn't horrible. He's playing against the Chargers, who have two super high end receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, which makes things really tough when these Giants receivers are not at that level for sure. But even then, it's not like he was bad. He struggled a little bit with Mike Williams, but I'm comfortable at least with him at this point, especially in this defense where they don't put a lot of pressure on their corners to be all that good. So I like that a lot. And that means at the end of it with the Giants offense, you were talking about a team that can't run the ball, that is going to get smacked in the pass rush, that won't have receivers who are consistently able to drive play, and have a quarterback who can't deal with any of that very well. And so I have them at 6 to 13 points. And I don't know if it really gets better than that, frankly. I will give, again, credit to the receivers being good enough to maybe get some ball movement down the field, but that's about it. And you're talking about real danger with turnovers. It's tough. It's tough. So on the other side of the ball, is it better? Well, obviously the Washington football team loses Ryan Fitzpatrick. So we're talking about Taylor Heinicke coming in the game. Now, something I'm going to straight from the very, very beginning, I'm going to kind of skip to this part real quick. Taylor Heinicke's good. He's not great or anything. He's not like better than Ryan Fitzpatrick necessarily, but the difference between the two is not all that meaningful. And there are real reasons that Heinicke was able to have success against the dominant Buccaneers defense in the playoffs last year. And pretty much every time he's been on an NFL field, he's done things that are at least marginally impressive. So I'm just going to get that out of the way first. But back to the beginning, real quick, getting the run game out of the way. And frankly, this is kind of similar to the other side of the ball, right? Where this Giants defense is a lot better than people think. They give up like a super long 70-yard rushing touchdown to Melvin Gordon, so their numbers looked a lot worse last week. But overall, they were very consistently decent at the very least against the run, and as they were last year, and that's going to continue here, right? Because this front for the Giants is still really, really good. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, really high-end players. Austin Johnson, I actually like a lot. All of those dudes can stand up very well against the run, actually make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And this Washington interior, while it can keep up strength-wise between Roulier, Eric Flowers, especially Brandon Scherf, they're not good. They're just kind of fine, and they're going to do their job, but they're not really going to create a positive advantage. So that's not really getting you very far in the run game. And on the edges, the Giants aren't great there. Lorenzo Carter is a pretty good run defender. I'm not worried about him in this game. The other spot is the one you can attack, whether it's Ziminy's out there. Azeez Ojulari was not particularly impressive in his first game last week. But it's not like those guys are like horrible. And frankly, these Washington tackles are not like Charles Leno is a pass almost only player. He's way, way better as a pass rusher than as a run blocker, and he's not going to add value there. And Sam Cosmi was actually good. He was actually pretty good as a rookie or in his first game last week. I will absolutely give him that. He was doing things on the edge that were fairly impressive in the run game as far as moving straight forward. He had some decent movement skills as far as getting to the second level. There's stuff I definitely liked. Nothing I'm ready to like commit to. And again, especially against like Lorenzo Carter, I'm not really going to give him an advantage. So yeah, maybe there's a little bit there, but it's nothing special. And frankly, this Giants team is really coached well defensively in the run game. Tay Crowder is going to be fine in this game. Blake Martinez, frankly, is going to be fine. Blake Martinez can have real issues against teams that attack the edges of a defense and or get a lot of speed moving laterally. He sucks at that, but that's not this Washington team. They're really stock, normal run game, kind of old school as far as not keeping up with modern trends. And Antonio Gibson is the type of athlete that I'm very worried about him in space against Blake Martinez, which we'll get to later. But it's not like horrifying. So I don't think this Washington team is really going to be able to run the ball all that well either. And in the pass game, it's a little bit better than the Giants, but yeah, we'll talk about why. So pass rush wise, again, I'm not super encouraged here, but I'm not super scared either, right? On the interior, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence are going to push the pocket in some. They're going to have a few times where they can actually meaningfully get to the quarterback. They're good enough to do that. It's nothing crazy. It's nowhere near enough for me to really consider it in the overall theme of the game, but it is enough to be aware of. On the edges, the more important part, listen, that's where it's tough because, right, Charles Leno is very clean here. I mentioned he's like a pass first player. Well, the reason is because he's good at that. And none of these Giants edge rushers are even close to the level that are going to give him problems consistently. On the other side, Sam Cosmi definitely had trouble with Joey Bosa last week, but so does literally everybody. And even then, it wasn't that bad. So I'm actually kind of encouraged about him just as a player overall. And again, with this Giants talent, it's just not scary. Now, the Giants do a reasonable job as far as creating pressure with their scheme, different types of blitzes, that type of thing. They were very, very good about it last year. I'll give them some credit there. That's going to help here, especially against a quarterback who's stepping in without a full offseason of training in Taylor Heineke. So I do think there's going to be more pass rush than maybe it looks like on paper, but it's not that concerning. Then we talk about the receivers and how they match up. So Terry McLaurin is just good enough. He's going to beat everybody no matter what. He is kept in check a little bit by James Bradbury, who is a very high-end corner, who will – I'm assuming we'll follow him around the field as he did Courtland Sutton last week. And while the matchup isn't as ideal because Terry McLaurin's a lot better just about getting open, it's just a lot better player, Bradbury is good enough to kind of stick him a little bit. The other options for Washington, as far as receivers go, that's what's not good here. Dyami Brown played his first game last week. I don't know. I wasn't particularly impressed. Now, very small sample size. I'm not going to make a declaration about how good he is or not, but nothing that I'm like, oh, yeah, I know he's scary. The way you knew Terry McLaurin was after his first game last year or 2 years ago. Adam Humphries, he still is going to do his job as an underneath receiver. He's actually pretty helpful in this game because the Giants play a lot of soft-ish zone, and he's going to be able to find spaces underneath. Not crazy high on him as far as a guy who's going to move your offense, but he can at least play in that area. And these Giants corners, I will say, I'll give them credit. They even played well last week, right? Logan Ryan in the slot is going to do enough to keep Adam Humphries kind of down a little bit. Adoree Jackson as your number 2 is a lot better than Dyami Brown is at this point in his career. So, the Giants do have an advantage in the secondary outside of this Terry McLaurin thing. And that is more important. It's important because then with the other weapons, this is where I will say, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth here, right? Because it's not a super easy one to predict necessarily. But the other weapons is where I'll give the Washington team a lot of credit here. Logan Thomas and the running backs, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic. I think J.D. McKissic is really important in this game, actually, for Washington. All three of those guys win in the areas that the Giants give up receptions as far as near the line of scrimmage. They can beat the Giants defenders who try to check them there, whether that's Blake Martinez, hopefully not. Jabril Peppers was horrible last week against Noah Fant and Alberto Okwuegbunam. Now, both of those guys are better than Logan Thomas, but are better in the ways that beat Jabril Peppers than Logan Thomas is. But Thomas is still around there, so he is going to be kind of a problem in this game too if the Giants try to match up the same way. And Blake Martinez is horrible as a coverage player. Horrible. So that's where the Washington team really, really has an advantage with those three guys. I think they're going to beat the matchup defenders they put on him. Maybe Xavier McKinney helps with that. He was asked to play more deep safety. I don't know how they're going to use him necessarily, but that is the definitely encouraging part for the Washington football team. Now we have to talk about Taylor Heineke. So I talked about how I think he's good already, or reasonable. And the reason for that is he shows the ability to not get terrified in the pocket if things aren't going correctly, especially evidenced by the Buccaneers last year. He has some anticipation of how defenses move and function. And overall, he was able to do things as a quarterback and maybe more importantly, not do horrible things that were enough for me to be like, yeah, if he's in a positive offensive situation that does smart things, he's going to be able to do some work. Washington's not really that. They're fine, but they don't really add anything. What scares me, though, is he does lack arm strength, and he will put a lot of throws in the air early, which against the Giants team that plays a lot of zone and has smart defenders who will react to the ball in their corners, Logan Ryan especially, and Xavier McKinney, I think, is probably getting into that category too. There's some worry there, and it's not like these weapons, right, are going to make stuff super easy for him. Terry McLaurin, again, is going to be good, but he's not going to go crazy the way that and be a one-man offense. And while that other stuff is useful, I'm talking useful between 0 and 10 yards, not as a pushing the ball downfield. So this offense, I think, frankly, despite me thinking Heineke's kind of good, will also struggle. This Giants defense is absolutely not bad. They're a higher end defense that is going to be sunk statistically all year by how bad their offense is, especially against matchups like this. But that makes it tough for this Washington team too, especially the backup quarterback stepping in. So I have them, Washington, at 9 to 16 points. So I don't think. Listen, this over under at 40.5. I'm a huge fan of going under because you have to ask yourself, how do either of these teams get into the 20s? And that shit's impossible, to be honest with you, outside of the very notable, important caveat of turnovers. Both these teams, especially the Giants, are prone to turnovers. And I suppose if there's ever going to be a game with 2 defensive touchdowns, it would be this one. But, even then, I think you have room to get under that because like just offenses suck and the defenses are actually good is really the point. Now I do end up feeling okay with the Washington football team winning. That's what I'm going to take to win this game because I think they have a lot more paths to success offensively. They're not ideal ones, but they're at least there as opposed to with the Giants where it's like, man, they're so bad up front. I don't really see how it possibly goes well. But that being said, the spread is at 3.5 right now. And for as good as I think the Washington defense is going to be, the Giants defense could be every bit as good in this game for sure. I mean, we're talking about, Taylor Heinicke as a backup quarterback with no experience stepping into an offense with one good offensive weapon. Like, that's not exactly ideal, especially with 3.5. This could very easily be a field goal at the last minute game type thing. I don't, with teams barely scoring the teens, 3.5 ends up being a large number. So that's why I would never touch that. But I do like the under a lot. And that is your Thursday night football preview, Washington, New York Giants.